The distress beacon shouldn't have existed. Jackson Reed stared at the readings on his salvaged ship's crackling display, wiping grease from his weathered hands with a rag that had seen better decades. The rusty Prophet drifted through the crimson nebula like a metal tumbleweed, its hull scarred from countless encounters with space debris and questionable life choices. "Bloody hell," he muttered, adjusting the ancient receiver. The signal was older than anything he'd encountered. In 15 years of scavenging the galaxy's forgotten corners, it pulsed with the distinctive harmonic pattern of Keltheran tech, but that was impossible. The Keltheran Empire had fallen 12 years ago, its worlds burned to glass by the Nexus Syndicate. Jackson scratched his stubbled chin. Keltheran salvage was worth a fortune to the right collectors. Even a broken communicator could fund repairs to his ship's failing life support system. He plotted a course toward the signal source, deep within the nebula's crimson clouds. The Prophet groaned in protest as he pushed the engines harder than they were meant to go. "Come on, girl," he coaxed. "One more payday, then we'll find you a nice scrapyard to retire in." 3 hours later, something massive loomed out of the swirling red mist. It was a space station, ancient and elegant in the way only Keltheran architecture could be. Crystalline spires jutted from organic-looking whole sections that seemed to grow rather than be built. But it was dark, lifeless, bleeding atmosphere from a dozen hull breaches. Jackson's excitement dimmed. Dead stations rarely yielded anything valuable except spare parts and ghosts. He docked at what looked like a maintenance bay, the Prophet's magnetic clamps struggling to find purchase on the alien metal. Its environmental suit was patched in 6 places and smelled like recycled regret, but it held pressure. The station's corridors were quiet, emergency lighting casting eerie shadows on walls covered in delicate Keltheran script. Jackson followed the distress signal deeper into the station's heart, his heavy boots echoing in the darkness. That's when he heard voices. 2 figures emerged from the shadows ahead, young women, maybe early 20s, dressed in makeshift clothing cobbled together from station materials. One was tall and fierce-looking, with silver hair braided with wire and metal fragments. Other was smaller, her dark hair adorned with what looked like pieces of broken crystal that caught the light. Both were pointing energy weapons at him. "That's far enough, scavenger," the tall one said, her accent carrying the refined tones of old Keltheran nobility. "State your business or find yourself breathing vacuum." Jackson raised his hand slowly. "Easy there, princess. I'm just following." "A distress beacon? You the ones broadcasting?" The shorter woman exchanged a glance with her companion. "We are Nira and Vex," she said carefully. "We've been ... stranded here. For how long? 11 years? 7 months? 16 days. Vex replied without hesitation. Jackson's eyebrows rose. These women had been barely children when they'd arrived, and you've survived this whole time. Alone. Nira lowered her weapon slightly. The station's biosystems are still partially functional. We learned to maintain them, to hunt the creatures that nest in the lower levels, to keep the air recyclers running. Impressive. Jackson studied their faces, noting the proud bearing despite their rough circumstances. Something about them seemed familiar, important. "What makes you think I'd help you get off this floating tomb?" Vex's grip tightened on her weapon. "Because you're human, and humans are predictably greedy. We can pay you. With what? Broken crystals and station rations?" Nira stepped forward, pulling something from beneath her improvised cloak. It was a signet ring, carved from what looked like solidified starlight, the royal seal of the Keltheran Empire. Jackson's breath caught. "You're not just stranded survivors. Are you?" "We are the daughters of Queen Zara Kelther," Nira said quietly. "The lost princesses everyone gave up searching 4 years ago." The silence stretched between them like a taut wire. Then Jackson began to laugh, a sound caught between amazement and disbelief. "Well," he said finally, "this is either the best con job I've ever seen, or I just struck the biggest payday in the Outer Rim." He held out his hand to Nira. "Either way, princesses, looks like you just bought yourselves a ride home." Queen Zara Kelther stood before the memorial wall in her exile ship's war room, her fingers tracing the holographic names of the dead. 12 years had passed since the fall of Kelthar Prime, but the screams of her burning world still echoed. In her dreams, she remembered that final, terrible day with crystalline clarity. The Nexus Syndicate's black ships had descended like locusts, their plasma cannons turning the crystal cities into molten slag. In the throne room's final moments, as enemy soldiers breached the palace walls, she had made the most agonizing choice of her life. Take them to the sanctuary station, she had commanded Captain Thoric, her most trusted guard. Keep them safe, until I can come for them. 8-year-old Nira had cried as the escape pod sealed shut. Vex, barely 6, had pressed her small hands against the viewport, calling for her mother. The last Zara saw of her daughters was their faces disappearing into the crimson nebula. Now, aboard the flagship Starlight's Edge, she commanded a fleet of barely 200 ships all that remained of a once mighty empire. Her people had scattered across the galaxy, some hiding in refugee camps, others assimilating into alien cultures, many simply lost forever. "Your Majesty," came a voice from behind her. Captain Rillan Thoric's successor approached with a data tablet in his weathered hands. "We've received something, unusual." Zara turned, her violet eyes sharp despite the weight of years. "Speak plainly, old friend. A human salvage vessel was detected near the Crimson Nebula 2 days ago. Our deep space monitors picked up its signature near the coordinates of Sanctuary Station 7. Zara's heart clenched. Sanctuary Station 7, where she had sent her daughters all those years ago. She had dispatched 3 search expeditions to find it, but the nebula's radiation had made it impossible to locate. "A human?" she asked, her voice carefully controlled. "Ship's registry shows a Jackson Reed, operating a vessel called the Rusty Prophet. No military record, but... Rylan hesitated. "The ship's energy signature suggests it docked with something large in that sector." "Scavengers," Zara said bitterly, "picking over the bones of our dead." But even as she spoke, a treacherous hope kindled in her chest. What if the station still existed? What if, against all odds, her daughters had somehow survived? "Assemble Strike Squadron Omega," she commanded. "We're going to the nebula, Your Majesty. The risk is mine to take." Zara's voice carried the iron authority that had held her shattered people together for over a decade. "If there's even the smallest chance they're alive, I will move heaven and stars to find them." Within hours, 12 sleek Keltharan fighters accompanied the royal yacht Dawn's Promise toward the Crimson Nebula. Zara stood on the bridge, her ceremonial armor gleaming, the crown of stars absent from her brow. She had sworn never to wear it again, until her daughters were found or confirmed dead. As they entered the nebula's edge, long-range sensors detected energy signatures consistent with human technology. But there was something else, faint traces of Keltharan biosystems functioning after all these years. "There," whispered Zara, pointing to a distant speck on the tactical display. "Sanctuary. Station 7. But as they approached, they found only empty space and debris. The station was gone, leaving behind a field of crystalline fragments that caught the nebula's crimson light like frozen tears. Zara's knees nearly buckled. After 12 years of hope, after holding on to the desperate belief that somewhere in the vast darkness her children lived and waited for her return, she faced the terrible possibility that she was truly alone. "Your Majesty," Communications Officer Petra called out urgently. "I'm detecting a hyperspace trail. Recent. Leading deeper into the nebula." "Follow it," Zara commanded, her voice hollow but determined. "Whatever happened here, whatever took, my station, I will have answers." The small fleet disappeared into the swirling red clouds, chasing ghosts and the last ember of a mother's hope. Behind them, unseen and undetected, a massive Nexus Syndicate dreadnought emerged from stealth mode. Director Kronos smiled coldly from its bridge, his scarred face illuminated by tactical displays. "The Queen takes the bait," he murmured to his lieutenant. "Signal all hunter squadrons. After 12 years of searching, we finally have a trail to follow." The trap was closing, and somewhere in the vast nebula, 3 ships carried the fate of an empire toward an inevitable collision. The rusty prophet limped through hyperspace with all the grace of a wounded asteroid. Jackson had pushed the engines past their safety margins, and now every joint in the ship groaned with metallic protests. In the cargo bay, Nira and Vex huddled. Around a portable heater, their meager possessions scattered around them like the remnants of a broken life. "Your ship sounds like it's dying," Vex observed, her silver hair catching the flickering light from overhead panels. "She's been dying." "For years," Jackson replied from the cockpit. "The trick is convincing her to die somewhere convenient." Their destination was Haven's Rest, a neutral trading post where Jackson hoped to find parts for his failing hyperdrive. But as they dropped out of hyperspace, they found something unexpected waiting for them. A massive sphere hung in space before. The trading post, clearly artificial, its surface covered in geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. It pulsed with an inner light that seemed to shift through colors that had no names. "That wasn't here 3 weeks ago," Jackson muttered, checking his instruments. A voice suddenly filled the ship's communication system not transmitted, somehow speaking directly through the ship's hull itself. "Kelthoran life signs detected, royal genetic markers confirmed, initiating protection protocols." The sphere moved with impossible grace, positioning itself between the Prophet and Haven's Rest. The trading post's defense grid powered up, but their weapons simply passed through the sphere as if it wasn't there. Nur gasped. "It's a keeper." "A what?" Jackson demanded. "Akoko. Ancient guardians," Vex explained, her face pale. "We thought they were myths, stories the old teachers told about. Eyes that protected our most sacred sites." The voice spoke again, somehow conveying vast intelligence and infinite patience. "I am Core 7, last guardian of the Kelthoran archive. These heirs carry the royal bloodline. They must be protected." Space around them shimmered, and suddenly they were inside the sphere, surrounded by walls that looked like living crystal. The Prophet sat in a hangar that adjusted its size to accommodate the ship perfectly. Core 7. It's manifested as a hologram not humanoid, but a constantly shifting geometric form that somehow conveyed emotion through its movements. "Princess Nira, Princess Vex, I have waited 800 years for your return." 800 years? Nira stepped forward, her voice filled with awe. "But where only time moves differently for digital consciousness," Sor 7 replied. "I have maintained the archive, preserved the knowledge, protected the scattered children of Kelthor. But you, you are the key to everything, the Guardian." Led them through corridors that defied physics, walls becoming floors, gravity shifting to accommodate their movement. They emerged into a vast chamber filled with floating data crystals, each one containing the preserved knowledge of their fallen. "Empire. Your people are not extinct, Court," 7 announced. 17 colony worlds remain hidden. 3 million survivors wait in refugee camps. But they need leaders. They need hope. They need their princesses. Vex touched one of the crystals and images. Flowed through the Airstar maps, colony records, the locations of hidden Kelthoran fleets. "All this time we thought we were alone." "You were never alone," the Guardian replied. "But you were lost. And now that you have been found, others will come." As if summoned by his words, alarms began to sound throughout the sphere. Core 7's form flickered with distress. "Nexus Syndicate Hunter Squadron approaching." They followed your hyperspace trail. Through the sphere's transparent walls, they could see sleek black ships dropping out of hyperspace predators closing in for the kill. "Can this thing fight?" Jackson asked, checking his sidearm out of habit. "I am not a weapon of war," Court 7 replied. "I am a protector of knowledge, but ... The sphere began to move, accelerating impossibly fast. "I can ensure your survival." Space twisted around them as Core 7 opened what looked like a tear in reality itself. Through it, they could see a lush world covered in silver forests and crystal. "Cities New Kelthor," the Guardian announced. "A sanctuary world hidden from all charts. Your people wait for you there." But as they approached the rift, plasma bolts erupted around them. A Nexus dreadnought had appeared, its massive guns tracking their movement, or jamming the portal. Core 7 declared, his form flickering with strain. In the cargo bay, something extraordinary happened. Nira suddenly stiffened, her eyes rolling back to show only white. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that resonated through the ships. "Whole. I can feel them," she whispered. "The hunters. Their minds are dark, hungry." Her consciousness reached out, touching the thoughts of the Nexus pilots. For just a moment, confusion rippled through their formation as she clouded their targeting systems with telepathic interference. It was enough. The sphere shot through the closing rift just as the portal collapsed, leaving the Hunter Squadron. Behind in normal space, they emerged above New Kelthar, where a small fleet of graceful ships rose to meet them, the first Keltharan vessels they had seen in 12 years, but victory was tainted by terrible knowledge. As Core 7's sphere dissolved around them, allowing the Prophet to fly free, the Guardian delivered one final warning. "The Nexus knows you live. Director Kronos will not stop until you are dead or captured. The hunt has begun in earnest." Looking down at the beautiful world below, Nira touched her sister's hand. They had found their people at last, but they had also painted a target on everyone they hoped to protect. The lost princesses were lost no more. But the real test of their courage was only just beginning. Director Kronos studied the tactical display in his private chamber aboard the dreadnought Iron Fist, his scarred fingers tracing the hyperspace trail that had gone cold at the edge of charted space. 12 years of hunting and the Keltharan. Royal brats had slipped through his grasp by mere minutes. "Status report," he commanded, his voice carrying the cold authority of a man who had burned worlds. Lieutenant Torres approached cautiously. "Kronos had executed 3 officers this week for failing to capture the princesses, and the crew walked on razor's edge around their volatile commander. The sphere vanished completely, sir.
Our sensors
Detected some kind of spatial distortion before it disappeared, possibly an artificial wormhole." Kronos turned from the display, his mechanical eye worry as it focused on his subordinate. The left side of his face bore the scars of a Keltharan plasma grenade from the Wara, reminder of why he had made their extinction his life's work. "Then, we expand the search," he said simply. "Signal all hunter squadrons, double the bounty. I want every mercenary, pirate, and information broker in 3 sectors looking for those girls." "Sir, the Galactic Council has issued warnings about the—" "Council can rot in vacuum." Kronos' voice dropped to a whisper, which was somehow more terrifying than his shouts. "Those princesses represent the last hope of Keltharan independence. While they live, the survivors will never truly submit. They will keep believing in restoration. In revenge," he moved to the chamber's view screen, which showed the swirling chaos of the Crimson Nebula. "But there's another player in this game now, the human. Run his ship's registry through our databases." Within minutes, Torres returned with a datapad. Jackson Reed, former Syndicate enforcer, discharged 5 years ago after refusing to execute civilian prisoners during the Meridian campaign. A cold smile spread across Kronos' ruined face. "Reed, I remember him. A man with an inconvenient conscience." He paused, savoring the irony. "Send a coded transmission to Agent Black. Tell him we have a special assignment." Meanwhile, 3 sectors away, the Rusty Prophet sat in a hidden docking bay carved into an asteroid field. New Kelthar's secret location remained unknown. But Core 7 had provided coordinates to this safe haven, a smuggler's port run by aliens, who asked no questions and took payment in rare metals. Jackson worked beneath his ship's engine housing, replacing burned-out power couplings while Nira and Vex explored their new surroundings. The asteroid station was a maze of tunnels and chambers, home to dozens of species who existed in the shadows between legitimate civilization. "Your ship's not the only thing that's dying," came a familiar voice. Jackson rolled out from under the engine to see a figure in sleek black armor standing in the docking bay entrance. The helmet's visor reflected his face back at him, but he recognized the voice. "Agent Black," Jackson said carefully, his hand moving toward the plasma cutter at his belt. "Still working for butchers and tyrants, I see. Still playing hero to lost causes." Black replied, removing his helmet to reveal a face that might have been handsome if not for the cold intelligence in his eyes. "You know why I'm here? The girls are under my protection, your protection." Black laughed. Jackson, you're flying a salvage hulk held together with prayer and stubbornness? Kronos has an entire fleet hunting them. You can't run forever.
Ach!
Me. Or ... Black's voice took on a persuasive tone. You could be smart about this. The Syndicate is offering full amnesty, a new ship, and more credits than you could spend in 10 lifetimes. All you have to do is walk away. Jackson considered this for a moment, then picked up his plasma cutter. Tempting, but I've got a better counter-offer. Black's hand moved to his sidearm, but he was too slow. The plasma cutter's beam sliced through the air where his head had been a second before, and the agent rolled behind a storage container. I tried to do this the easy way, Black called out as energy bolts began flying across the docking bay. The firefight was brief but intense. Black was better trained and better equipped, but Jackson knew every bolt and rivet of his ship. He used the Prophet's hull as cover, drawing the agent deeper into the docking bay's maze of support structures. The battle ended when Vex appeared behind Black, pressing a salvaged Keltheran energy weapon against his neck. Surrender, she said, simply, or become a cautionary tale. Black dropped his weapon, but his smile was unsettling. You think this changes anything? Kronos' hunter squadrons converging on this sector? More agents? More bounty hunters? The net is closing, and eventually, he never finished the sentence. Nira had emerged from the shadows, her eyes glowing with telepathic energy. She touched Black's forehead, and he collapsed instantly. What did you do to him? Jackson asked. Showed him what it feels like to have his homeworld burn around him, Nira replied quietly. Live, but he won't remember us clearly. The trauma will cloud his memories. Jackson stared at her with new respect and a touch of fear. Remind me never to get on your bad side, princess. But their victory was short-lived, as they prepared to leave the asteroid station. Long-range sensors detected a massive hyperspace signature, approaching something larger than any single ship had a right to be, through the station's viewports. They watched in horror as Director Kronos' personal flagship, the Iron Fist, dropped out of hyperspace. The massive dreadnought was escorted by 24 hunter squadrons, their black holes bristling with weapons. He found us, Vex whispered. No, Jackson replied grimly, firing up the Prophet's engines. He was already here. Black was just the distraction. As the first hunter squadrons began their attack run on the asteroid station, Jackson launched the Prophet into space. But they were vastly outnumbered, and even his piloting skills wouldn't be enough to escape the closing trap. Then salvation arrived. From an unexpected direction, Quianzar's royal fleet dropped out of hyperspace on the far side of the asteroid field, their elegant ships immediately engaging the Nexus forces. This is Queen Zara Kelther, to all units, came a transmission that made both princesses gasp with recognition. My daughters are on that smuggler ship. Protect them at all costs. The space battle was fierce but chaotic. In the confusion of ship-to-ship combat, the Prophet managed to break free from the immediate combat zone. But as they fled toward the edge of the system, disaster struck. A lucky shot from a hunter squadron damaged their hyperdrive just as a Syndicate boarding shuttle latched onto their hull. As armored soldiers cut through the airlock, Vex made a terrible choice. Keep Nira safe, she told Jackson, then triggered the manual hull breach that would separate the sections of the ship. The last thing they saw of her was Vex being dragged away by Syndicate soldiers, her silver hair streaming behind her like a battle banner. Now Director Kronos had what he needed most, a royal hostage to draw the remaining princess into his trap. Princess Nira stood on the bridge of her mother's flagship, the starlight's edge, watching the holographic display that showed her sister's prison. The Nexus Fortress ship Crimson Dawn hung in space like a metallic cancer, its surface bristling with defensive turrets and shield generators. 48 hours had passed since Vex's capture, and every moment of delay meant more danger for her sister. But Queen Zara's War Council remained divided on the best course of action. A direct assault would be suicide, Admiral Corton argued, his weathered face grim. A fortress carries enough firepower to destroy our entire fleet. Then we find another way, Zara replied, but her voice carried the weight of desperation. She had found one daughter only to lose the other, and the cruel irony was not lost on her. Jackson, still bearing burns from the battle that had cost them Vex, studied the tactical display with the eye of someone who had spent years surviving impossible odds. What if we don't have to fight the whole fortress? Just get inside and get her out? Impossible? Corton dismissed. Their shields have a rotating frequency designed to stop energy weapons and missiles, Jackson interrupted. But what about something smaller? Something that looks like debris? Nira stepped forward, her eyes bright with dangerous possibility. You're talking about a stealth insertion. One ship, minimal crew. One ship would never make it through. Their sensor grid? The Admiral protested. Lest that ship had help from the inside, Nira said quietly. I can feel Vex's mind, even at this distance. She's alive, but ... frightened. If I can establish a telepathic link, coordinate with her ... Queen Zara looked at her surviving daughter with a mixture of pride and terror. Nira, the risk is mine to take. The young woman's voice carried an authority that reminded everyone present that royal blood flowed in her veins. I've spent 12 years believing I was powerless, worthless, just another refugee hiding in the dark. But Core 7 showed me what I really am, what we really are. She moved to the command chair, and for a moment, the bridge lights seemed to respond to her presence growing brighter. I am Princess Nira of the House of Kelthar, heir to the Crystal Throne, and I will not abandon my sister to monsters. Plan they devised was audacious in its simplicity. Jackson's rusty prophet, disguised as floating wreckage, would drift toward the fortress ship's salvage bay. While the Nexus forces were distracted by a faint attack from the Keltharan fleet, Nira would use her telepathic abilities to guide them through the ship's interior. But Director Kronos was no fool. As the prophet approached the fortress, hidden sensors analyzed every molecule of the supposed debris. The trap was ready. Welcome aboard, Princess, Kronos' voice echoed through the ship's communication system. As magnetic clamps seized the prophet, I've been looking forward to meeting you. The salvage bay flooded with armed soldiers, but they found the ship empty, except for a recording device playing engine sounds. Nira and Jackson had already slipped out through the waste disposal system, using Vex's telepathic guidance to navigate the fortress's maze-like interior. They found her in the detention center's high-security wing, suspended in an energy cage that crackled with lethal current. But Vex was not broken, her silver eyes blazed with defiant fury. Took you long enough, she said as Jackson worked on the cage's control system. Sorry, Princess. Traffic was murder. Nira pressed her palm against the energy barrier, and for a moment her consciousness merged with her sister's. In that instant of connection, she felt something else, a vast network of imprisoned minds throughout the fortress. Oh, there's survivors, other prisoners of the syndicates, endless wars. We can't just leave them, Nira whispered. The mission, Jackson began. The mission is to save our people. All of them. Using her telepathic abilities at their fullest extent for the first time, Nira reached out to every imprisoned mind in the fortress. Keltharan survivors, human dissidents, alien refugees, she touched them all, showed them hope, coordinated their escape. Throughout the massive ship, cell doors began to open. Emergency alarms wailed as thousands of prisoners overpowered their guards and fought their way toward the hangar bays. But the effort was too much. Nira collapsed, blood streaming from her nose, her mind overwhelmed by the psychic strain. When in that moment of weakness, Director Kronos appeared with a squad of elite guards. Touching, he said, his scarred face twisted. With hate, a princess who cares about the common rabble. Your mother had the same weakness. Jackson stepped between Kronos and the sisters, his plasma rifle aimed at the director's head. Stay back. Or what? You'll kill me. Kronos laughed. I've already won, Red. My ships are moving to intercept the Keltharan fleet. Your queen will die today, along with the last hope of your pathetic empire. Through the fortress's viewports, they could see the space battle raging outside. Queen Zara's ships were surrounded, vastly outnumbered by Kronos' armada. When Vex made her choice, she had been listening to Kronos' communication channels through the cell's monitoring system. She knew what was coming. A final attack that would destroy her mother's fleet and end the last organized Keltharan. Resistance. Nira, she said urgently. The fortress's main weapon, someone could overload its power core from inside, ... Understanding flashed between the sisters. Explosion would destroy the fortress and cripple the Nexus fleet, but whoever triggered it wouldn't survive. No, Nira whispered. There has to be another way. There is, Jackson said quietly. He had been studying the fortress's schematics on his portable scanner. But someone needs to stay behind to make sure you both get out. For either sister could protest, Jackson was moving. He tackled Kronos, sending them both crashing through the detention center's viewport into the corridor beyond. Energy bolts flew as the elite guards gave chase. Go, he shouted over his shoulder. Get to the escape pods. Nira and Vex ran through corridors filled with fleeing prisoners and confused guards. Behind them, explosions began to rock the fortress. As Jackson fought his way toward the power core, he reached an escape pod bay just as the fortress began to break apart. Through the bay's observation windows, they could see Jackson in the distance, standing before a massive reactor assembly, his hands working frantically at a control panel. "Jackson!" Nira screamed into her communicator. His voice came back faint and full of static. "Tell your mother. Tell her the scavenger kept his bargain." The reactor overloaded in a blaze of light that lit up half the star system. The fortress cracked like an eggshell, its massive bulk breaking into burning fragments. The shockwaves scattered the Nexus fleet, many ships too damaged to continue the fight. In the aftermath, as rescue shuttles from Queen Zara's fleet pulled survivors from the wreckage, the sisters sat together in their escape pod, holding each other and mourning the human who had given everything to save them. 3 months later, Nira stood before the crystal throne on Nukalalthar, the crown of stars finally resting on her brow. The ceremony was broadcast to 17 worlds and 3 million survivors, marking the beginning of the Second Keltheron Empire. Queen Zara had abdicated, passing the crown to her daughter with the words, "You have proven yourself worthy not through birth, but through sacrifice. Rule wisely, rule justly, and never forget those who died to see this day." In her first act as Empress, Nira established the Reed Memorial Foundation, dedicated to helping war refugees of all species find new homes, and in the Foundation's charter, which included words that would be remembered long after the stars grew cold. No one is truly lost until they are forgotten. No one is truly alone until we stop searching for them. Somewhere in the vastness of space, the signal from a Keltheran memorial beacon pulsed steadily, carrying those words to anyone brave enough to listen. The lost had been found, the forgotten remembered, and hope had returned to light the darkness between the stars. The crown had found its way home at last.